Hi there. I'm Ellen Thorpe, the Executive Director of National Women in Roofing, and I'm so happy to welcome you today to our presentation, really giving some background and sharing some information about our new DEI education program, which is called Real Roofing, an essentials learning journey about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, this has been on the mind of the National Women in Roofing Executive Committee for several years. Probably about a year after we started the association, we knew that we wanted to do something. We knew that we wanted to talk about how to bring equity and inclusion to all people in the roofing industry. But really, when George Floyd was murdered in June, it really made us want to move more quickly. We wanted to move beyond those benign statements of support that very well-intentioned people and companies were making, and we wanted to actually take action. We wanted to do a specific something to bring about change in our industry. You know, this is not necessarily a National Women in Roofing program. This is a program that's open to everyone in the industry. We're just the group that's been willing to step forward and coordinate it. In other words, we're putting our money and our action where our talk is. We're not just talking the talk, we're going to walk the walk. And part of creating an equitable and inclusive workplace is starting with education. So a couple years ago, we started, as I mentioned, we started thinking about this more seriously and started looking for a guide, a coach that could help us through this process. We knew that we wanted to find an expert in DEI education. We wanted to find an expert in adult education. And we also wanted to find someone who was an expert in working with associations. And after an exhaustive research project, we found Rhonda Payne with Flock Theory. Rhonda, hi.
Hi, thank you so much, Ellen, Jenny. We have been so excited about working with the NWIR community and the roofing community more broadly on this project. I have here with me two of my colleagues. I want to introduce Garrett Turner, who is my partner in all things, my accomplice and co conspirator, fellow troublemaker, the good kind. And I also have my colleague Danielle Kaplan, our Chief of Staff. You'll see us, if you haven't, over the course of your learning journey virtually. You can text us anytime. And I want to turn it over to Garrett to talk about what the experience is going to look like.
So what I love about this program is the ease of it, and that includes the time commitment. So for a month, you'll receive 20 different micro lessons. So the nice part is, of course, that means no weekends. And you'll receive these micro lessons on your cell phone. You'll be able to complete them in under 20 minutes. And so we'll have our orientation meeting today, which is this call right here. We'll go through March 25th because we'll start on Monday, February 28th. And so you'll have a very easy timeline to follow. And again, because everything comes directly to you, you won't have to go anywhere. You'll have an opportunity to also evaluate the course at the end of each lesson and do this really on your own time. The debrief meeting will be at the end of March, and we will have a grace period because we know life happens. We're all dealing with many different factors. So the grace period will end on April 8th.
Awesome. Thank you, Garrett. I was torn, you guys. I'm going to tell you right now. I was torn about telling you about that grace period. So I just want to encourage you to forget that you just heard there is one. We definitely want to know if it feels good and right and comfortable and easy according to that 20 days and 20 minutes cadence. The grace period is there, but just forget to note that. Through the 1 month interactive series, we are hoping to make this available to every kind of roofing contractor and consultancy However, I wanted to mention that the charge was really to make sure that it was especially suitable for small and mid-sized organizations who may not have the same kind of resource or access to education that larger companies may. And so in just 20 days and 20 minutes, we're hoping to create a solid foundation in DEI essentials. So this process started many months ago. And as Ellen mentioned, we announced it to the community at NWIR Day last year, and we were in the process of a discovery phase. That discovery phase included me joining the community at NWIR Day and talking to lots of folks at IRE following. It also included monthly input and direction and guidance and coaching and feedback and support from Ellen and Jenny, which we are incredibly appreciative of. We also had some larger group meetings, focus group style, if you will, with the DEI committee and other stakeholders inside and outside of NWIR, because as Ellen mentioned, we were designing not for the women in roofing, but for all people in roofing. We conducted some research, as you might imagine, and one aspect of that research I wanted to mention was a broader survey to stakeholders that helped us prioritize the topics that would be covered in this initial offering. As you may have guessed, as you may know, there are a lot of topics, skills, competencies, and findings out in the world about diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is no way that one course will be all the things. So that prioritization was critically important to the focus of what you're going to see in this first lesson. The result of that discovery phase really is the design criteria you see here. It was important that the product that we create, the program that we create, the experience be easy, manageable in terms of time commitment and meeting each learner where they are in terms of their physical location as well as their knowledge level, right? It was important that the resulting program be accessible. And by accessible, I don't just mean for people with a disability or without a disability, which is commonly what we think of when we say accessible. I also mean price, geography, setting, whether it's home, office, job site, and size of company, right? Mid-size to small in particular. We knew that we were going to focus on a program that was going to be foundational, meaning there was no prerequisite knowledge. That's a tough one, right? So some of you may have knowledge of this area or these subjects already, and that's great. This will be a bit of a refresher, but I wanted to make sure that you know at the outset as you evaluate and participate in the pilot that the design of the content was intentionally foundational. So we won't go into all of the more advanced topics and lessons and issues yet. Not yet. And lastly, we also wanted to make sure that the program is personal and interpersonally focused, that it has contextualized stories from the industry, you know, for us, by us, if you will, and that the experience be engaging and interactive. So now I'm going to bounce it back to you, Garrett, to talk a little bit about one of those design criteria, engagement, and why that was so important and how we went about focusing on these features to deliver that design criteria.
Absolutely. So the idea that this is mobile first is one of my favorite features because you don't have to go anywhere. We all have our cell phone with us all the time. And the idea that this comes to you rather than you having to go to it is also such a great thing. No passwords is probably the best feature of all because once again, you don't have to think about what your special character, your number, your uppercase and lowercase letters are. You get to log in and continue your journey at your pace wherever you are, which is also really great because some of us will do it in the morning, some of us in the evening, some of us midday. But because of the ease of access, we are really hoping that everyone will participate in total, again, before needing a grace period, because of the ability to do this wherever you need to do it. The video centric piece is really nice. So each day your lesson will be broken up into several segments, and you'll see videos like what you see here, this lovely welcome that starts every session to welcome you back. And so you'll have the opportunity to learn a little bit. Then there will be some interactivity to break it up, because we don't want anyone getting fatigued during the process of these 20 minutes. And Rhonda will go into a little bit of why the various interactivity components will help make this sticky for each learner as they go on. But again, we tried to do this in a video-centric way so that it's more engaging, especially for adult learners. As for these being micro lessons, I'm sure that all of you have attended trainings and conferences where the standard presentation time is 60 minutes, 45 minutes of presentation, and maybe 15 minutes of Q&A. These are micro lessons, and they are proven to be better for adult learners. Rhonda may also touch on that in a few slides, but you'll hopefully enjoy the fact that you can get these bite-sized learning pieces daily, and then take those with you and begin to change your behavior, or begin to notice other people's behaviors, so that we can start to grow together as a community. And lastly, just as far as the navigation of this tool, and you'll begin to see it, it's so easy, because as you move through the course, there's only one direction, and that's forward. And the nice part about this is there's no additional settings that have to be changed or updated, and all of those types of things that tend to come along with other learning platforms. This is really a very simple design. And as I said, it's play and move forward. So
thanks, Garrett. Goodness knows none of us need another platform that we need to learn, right?
Or another password to remember.
Or another password to remember, right? So as we went out sourcing a technology solution to, an educational technology solution to support the learning we were designing, we were keeping all of these needs in mind, all of these, criteria and business requirements in mind. And we landed on a tool that I think you're really going to love. I'm excited about how NWIR was committed to investing in cutting edge technology for this course to make it the best that it can be. I think, again, you're just going to love having these lessons drop right into the palm of your hand. You do have some options if you'd like to only get it via text and not by email, or if maybe you don't like texts and you only want to get your alerts each day by email instead. All of that is possible. And I'll invite you to just reach out to us, to me, Danny, Garrett. We are the team of administrators behind this course. And so as you receive a text, just know there are real people. We are the real people on the other end. We are here to support you as we go along. So don't hesitate to reach out about anything at all. As Garrett mentioned, this is designed for interactivity, right? Even before discovery phase, when I first connected with Ellen and we talked and just geeked out together about our excitement and the potential of this, we knew that interactivity had to be centered completely. And so we've done that. And so what you can expect to see are lots of different question and engagement types, interactivity types. And I've listed a few of them here just to give you a sense of that, but I don't want to spoil them all, right? I want you to experience them as you go and then give us feedback about what they feel like and which type you really like. There are poll questions, there are fill in the blanks like the one you see depicted here on screen. There are ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 where you slide a little ratings bar. There are assessment questions. Um, the fill in the blank is probably our favorite. That's probably why you see it here. We love this one. You're going to see that one a few
Definitely my
times.
favorite.
But really, they're all so good, and we mix it up so you can expect a variety, right? We're not going to bore you with something that feels cookie cutter every single day. It's going to be a slightly different but familiar experience each day. As I mentioned, there is that two-way communication. Sometimes we will ask you to communicate with us. Sometimes you'll just decide you have a question. Both of those are correct. You can reach out to us anytime. Most of you are already enrolled, so you already know how to reach us. That text you got when you enrolled, just text us right back, and we'll be in touch. So whether it is something technical that you've run into, a glitch you've experienced, or something doesn't feel quite right, or something you'd like to do but you don't know how, reach out with the technical questions. Danny's gonna really be bringing up the team's performance in terms of helping us with those technical questions. And also, if you have questions about DEI, about the subject and content of the lessons, or you're thinking about something, or had an experience and are processing something, you can reach out with that kind of question or comment at any time as well. You're going to see that we used another feature that is gaining traction. In addition to video, which Garrett mentioned for engagement, and just to backtrack a moment, y'all know that video is super popular. I had to resist every urge to show you some like graphs and data about how very popular video is as the delivery mechanism of choice for information for adult learners. And so we leaned right into that. But also another trend you mentioned was microlearning, right? Again, text me if you're interested. I can send you tons of resources on that. But another trend is gamification. And so you've experienced it, whether it's been called that or not. If you've ever seen a leaderboard, right? For me, my first experience with leaderboards was probably back when I used to go to arcades as a preteen and play like Mrs. Pac-Man. And you know how you get that leaderboard at the end based on your score? Well, this is kind of like that, where different engagement and activity and lesson completions, whether they're mandatory or optional, come with points. And you'll earn those points, and there's a leaderboard. So if you've been in the orientation lesson as we wait for kickoff day, you've already seen that in action. We will keep track of that. It's available for anyone to see, but just know it's just in good fun. It's not it's not anything other than good fun, and to let you see how you're progressing. Lastly, there are challenge questions. So while there's lots of different question types, each lesson has a challenge question. This question is unique, and you may not even know which is which, and that's okay, but we wanted you to know that we have flagged a particular question in each lesson that has a right or wrong answer. All the other question and interactivity types, they're for feedback or assessment and progress through the lesson, but they don't have hard right and wrong answers in every case. Challenge questions do. They're like a test question or a quiz. And so we are paying special attention to those as we evaluate whether the learning is beginning to stick. We also design for impact, and we'll talk a little bit more about the kind of impact that we look for from learning. But ultimately, we are looking to make change, right? We're educating for the purpose of having an impact. And the learning journey approach, this multi-day, multi-week learning journey, as opposed to a one-off compulsory session that a company might host for its employees every other year for 2 hours, is key. We are also using this structured drip approach to the content, And we're using some very like learning geeky things that I just love when it comes to adult learning theory. We're using spaced repetition. So that means you're going to hear certain things again. So it's not an accident. If there is a little redundancy or we ask you to reflect back or recall something, we call it forced recall in the learning world, it's on purpose. These are techniques that will help things stick. You may have noticed when you go to that one off training session on any topic, uh, a few hours later, you might not remember much. And a few days later or a few weeks later, you definitely don't remember much. If you're not using it and you've heard it only once, something happens that we call the forgetting curve, and it's drastic. We forget things very quickly, and you need only think back to the last training you went to that was like that to know that what I'm saying is true. And so, all of these tactics we're using are to overcome the forgetting curve and to foster retention. Garrett, would you like to walk us through these themes?
Yeah, so as Rhonda mentioned earlier, we went through an exhaustive process to determine what the key components needed to be for the learners in this industry, and also for a foundational course. We've come up with the 4 buckets that you see before you. So identity and language, bias awareness, prejudice and discrimination, inclusive leadership, and culture. Identity and language really focuses on understanding ourselves and those around us and thinking about how we talk about things like race, gender, ethnicity, what the differences are with some of these words, because oftentimes you'll find that people use certain terminology interchangeably when in fact it should not be. Bias awareness is really taking a look again, not only at our own biases, but starting to think about moments where we've experienced bias and maybe didn't realize it, or starting to understand situations where we've witnessed bias, and thinking about how we could do things differently or how we can work with others around us to be aware of bias and how to mitigate it when possible. Prejudice and discrimination is a section that's going to cover a wide variety of the types of discrimination that people experience in the workplace. And it will also walk you through how to start to mitigate that. And inclusive leadership and culture is really thinking about teams, how they connect, what you can do from any seat within an organization to affect the culture of the organization and to be very inclusive and equitable in your behavior. And again, to help educate others on how to be more equitable and inclusive in their behavior.
Thanks, Garrett. So I mentioned impact earlier and designing for impact. Well, this is why, right? We're wanting behavioral outcomes. We are seeking to change how we act, changing, you might have heard, we're changing what we know so we can change what we do. And the outcomes that we set out for this learning journey is to make sure that after the course is completed, we'll be better equipped to evaluate forms of identity that are shaping ourselves and others, that we will understand the levers that drive destructive social hierarchies and begin to control those levers, that will understand why inclusion matters and how we can be a part of inclusive cultures, that will overcome incorrect intuitions we may have about others, and that we will begin to model a shared vocabulary for inclusive communication in all communication channels. We've discussed this a bit, right? The idea that each lesson is really anchored mostly by video. So in your 20 minutes a day, the majority of that, 10, 15 minutes of that is video. It's broken down in sections to make it easier for you to start and stop and for us to probe and create interactivity during the course of the video. but most of your experience is video based. So it's going to feel very similar in some ways to watching video on YouTube or Vimeo. Just possibly better quality than some of the things you see out there. let's just say that that's the case. And you see one of our lovely on screen talent here to give you a sense of what that video experience is going to look like.
And I think it's important to note that we also took the time to break up the on-screen talent so that you're not seeing the same face all the time for all 20 minutes and 20 lessons. So
absolutely, right? Like we know we've designed a lot of learning. B, we are lifelong learners ourselves, and we know what it's like when something feels just like the monotonous talking head, like again and again. In this like pandemic, Zoom centered world, we know it can get monotonous. We know we're all struggling with burnout and pressure and all kinds of things in the world that might be zapping our energy. This lesson shouldn't be one of them. So we've definitely taken time to mix it up and bring lots of variety to your screen. Part of that variety includes real roofing stories. We love these. Can I say that again? We love these. Okay, so this is where we knew we needed to contextualize the instruction to the roofing industry, right? We need to understand how these concepts are manifesting themselves within this space, within our space. And so we have some wonderful members and leaders in the community who stepped forward and volunteered to share their stories with us and to allow us to share their stories with you. So look forward to that. You'll see one of these in almost every lesson. And if you're interested in sharing a real story, we're still collecting them. So send us a text, reach out. We'd love to feature your story as well. So each day, you're going to get prompts from us, activities from us. What I want to do is make sure you know one of the types of prompts you're going to get is encouraging you to practice. So sometimes we say the best learning happens by doing, right? Learning by doing, it's a thing. Well, that's basically comes down to practice, right? That's how habits are made. That's how new behaviors become behaviors that stick, is through practice. And so we're going to invite you to practice. And so I just am giving you a heads up. It'll look like this. This is an example. A scenario or a question where you turn your camera on your phone or tablet or computer on yourself, record your response, and upload it for us. And we'll give you some feedback about what you shared and any suggestions that we might have to add to what you're thinking in terms of your response. You're also going to sometimes be asked to reflect. After all, we're focused on the personal and interpersonal in this lesson, in this course. And so that often means self-awareness and reflection. And so we'll take a topic, for example, biases, and encourage you to reflect. If you have ever spent time journaling, it's similar to that kind of process, and there's similar value in it. But what we've done is built it right into your lesson, so you'll be able to essentially journal about the topic we present and reflect right within the context of the lesson, right on your phone. And of course, there's feedback, because after all, you are participating in the first ever cohort for this course. This is a pilot. Thank you. Number one, we just want to thank you for doing that. We are excited to hear what you think and to continue to iterate on this course together with your input. There may be a few bumps in the road. So that's natural. We expect that. Of course, we try not to have any. But realistically, right, we are in this together and we want to make tweaks to the program to improve it. And so we'll look for your experience, we'll look for your feedback, and we'll count on you for that. Now, there are 4 levels of learning evaluation that we, the Flock Theory team, think about when we think about education. And I say the Flock Theory team, it's really like learning professionals all over. These are well known. This is not our framework. This is the Kirkpatrick framework. But it comes in 4 levels. That first level is the most accessible, most widely used, and frankly the easiest kind of feedback to get about a training course. It centers around how the instruction, how the education experience made the learner feel. And so when we run learning analytics to look at your engagement with the lessons and the different activities we've presented, when we reflect and aggregate poll responses or responses to other questions and activities, when we look at your response to prompts at the end of each lesson about how you liked that lesson and any issues you uncovered or ideas you have for improvement, all of that's related to kind of this level 1 reaction. If you've ever filled out an evaluation at the end of a session or the end of an event, that's reaction feedback, right? The second level we look at is learning. Learning is more about how effectively the information that was shared was absorbed. To use Garrett's word, how sticky is it, right? And we'll be getting into that as well throughout the course. So the assessments, the challenge questions, things like that help us determine whether some key points are actually sticking. The practice does that as well. Now, as Garrett mentioned when going over the timeline for the month, there is a debrief meeting after we all finish the lesson and finish the course of study. And that's also going to give us lots of information. What we are committing to for you is that we're going to aggregate some of that reaction and learning feedback that comes throughout the course and be able to present it back to you in aggregate as we discuss our collective feedback together during the debrief. Now, those last 2 levels, those are kind of tricky, behavior and results. These levels are much more difficult to get at and therefore much less common that we evaluate them. But as learning leaders, we care a lot about this, right? Because we're getting into like what this is all about and why we're all doing it in the first place. We're shaping our behavior, but we're shaping our behavior also because we are trying to achieve different outcomes. You might think of it as the ROI, return on investment of your time or your money. We also like to think about it as the ROE, the return on the education, because that's really for us what education is about. And we just want to share that context with you. In order to get at this, right, the behavior, did it actually change, behavior in the weeks and months following? This is an evaluation of the degree to which the training influences your behavior and how you're applying your new knowledge. So to get at that, as well as the impact of that behavior change on your business, we have to ask you later. So expect us to probe you via text or email alert 1 month, 2 months, and 6 months after the program's completed. So we want to know, that's a bit of a long tail, right? It's a bit longitudinal, but we want to know how are we doing at achieving real impact. And that's how we'll find out. And now I want to turn it, with tremendous thanks from me, from Garrett, from Danielle, and the whole Flock Theory team, who have had just a ball working on this, all of the great talent and technical support teams that have helped us as well, to turn it back over, Ellen, to you and Jenny to talk about what's next.
Thanks, Rhonda. We really wanted you to see the intentionality, the science of adult education that goes into the creation of this course. And the output, the deliverable that you're seeing, is all of that science of adult education and DEI education combined with the pace of the roofing industry. Jennifer Stone is a past chair of National Women in Roofing and also on the call with us today. And, you know, we, in the very beginning when we started talking about this, we knew that this needed to be custom for the roofing industry. We did not want to take an existing program and try to, you know, make it work for roofing. We wanted a custom program for the entire roofing industry. As white women, we have experienced tremendous privilege in our lives. It doesn't mean we haven't worked hard. That's not what privilege means. But it does mean that we feel that it is our responsibility to help dismantle these systems of oppression that exist in our industry and in our society. And that's one of the reasons that the executive committee and the board of National Women in Roofing felt so strongly that we needed to bring this to fruition on behalf of the entire roofing industry. The goal here is to meet people where they're at. It's hard for many of us to talk about these issues about race, class, and gender. It's very uncomfortable. I'm really afraid I'm going to say something wrong. Even right now, I'm afraid I'm going to say something wrong. But we have to start the conversation. If we want things to be equitable, if we want things to be inclusive, if we want the people that we work with to have a feeling of belonging when they're in the office or on the job site, we have to talk about these things. So we're really excited that you're on this journey with us. We're so grateful that we've had the opportunity to bring this to the roofing industry, and we look forward to working with you to figure these things out. Thanks for your time today.